The conference room hummed with anticipation. Bodies pressed against walls. Folding chairs scraped concrete as residents shifted for better views. Phones held high captured angles that would flood social media within the hour. The air conditioner wheezed against Georgia heat and rising tension. Constance Hargrove sat rigid at the front table. Richard Ashford, her attorney, gripped a pen that hadn't touched paper in 20 minutes. Her blonde hair, usually immaculate, showed roots gray as ash. 56 years of certainty had evaporated somewhere between this morning's newspaper and this afternoon's reckoning. Elijah Nathaniel Thornton approached the microphone with the measured pace of a man who'd spent 18 years mastering boardrooms. 6 feet of controlled power wrapped in charcoal wool. The briefcase under his arm contained documentation that would dismantle a woman's carefully constructed empire. His voice, when it came, needed no amplification to reach the overflow crowd spilling into the hallway. Behind him, the projection screen displayed numbers stark as verdict. Monthly disbursements, $9,300. Duration 36 months. Total $334,800. Every cent flowing from community coffers into a company that existed only on paper. Elijah's fingers touched the folder. What you don't know, Mrs. Hargrove, is that you called the police on the man who owns this property. The man who's been documenting your crimes. The man who's about to change 52 families' lives. Constance's face drained to the color of old bone. Cameras flashed. Someone in the back started clapping before a sharp look from Victoria Blackwell, Elijah's attorney, restored silence. In the front row, 8-year-old Zara Thornton sat between Wendell Grayson and Victoria. Her blue dress, Diana's last gift before cancer took her, hung slightly too short now. The gap where her front tooth used to be showed when she smiled. She wasn't smiling. The screen went black. White letters appeared 3 days earlier. Thursday afternoon sunlight turned the Rolls-Royce Phantom's interior golden. Zara pressed her nose against window glass, watching Riverside Elementary fade in the side mirror. Her backpack wedged between her feet bore stickers of planets and one crooked declaration: "Science is magic." Elijah checked the rear view. His daughter's reflection showed Diana's eyes. Diana's determined chin. Diana's way of pursing lips when thinking hard about something. 3 years since ovarian cancer had stolen his wife. Some days the absence felt fresh as morning wounds. Sophie's doing volcanoes for the science fair. Zara's gap-toothed grin appeared and vanished. I told her everyone does volcanoes. I'm researching binary stars instead. Traffic light ahead shifted to yellow. Elijah let the Phantom coast to stillness. $473,000 of German engineering responding to the lightest pressure. He'd bought it the week after Diana's funeral. The therapist had warned about impulse decisions during grief. Elijah had written the check anyway because Diana had loved beautiful things and he couldn't give her anything anymore except proof that he'd made it. Farm boy from Cleveland to $217 million in assets. She'd been there for 16 of those 18 years. Binary stars show advanced thinking. He watched the light cycle. Like 2 stars orbiting each other, connected by gravity. Exactly. Mr. Chen said it demonstrates understanding of complex systems. Zara kicked her feet against the backpack. Can we get ice cream after your meeting? Cookie dough flavored green light. Elijah accelerated with the patience of someone who'd learned that rushing meant missing crucial details. Thornton Capital owned 284 properties across 9 states. Each acquisition meticulously documented, each transaction transparent. The portfolio represented years of building something that would outlast him, something Zara could inherit with pride instead of debt. Chocolate chip mint with cookie dough pieces. But you stay in the car while Daddy works. 15 minutes. Doors locked. Like we practiced. Zara's reflection nodded. They'd practiced many scenarios. How to stay calm when store security followed them through aisles. How to keep hands visible during traffic stops. how to be twice as excellent to earn half the recognition. Diana had wanted to shield their daughter from those lessons. Elijah knew you couldn't shield anyone from reality. You could only prepare them to survive it with dignity intact. The GPS chimed destination approaching. Riverside Meadows, 47 single-family homes, 1 community center, 1 pool needing resurfacing, 1 HOA running the neighborhood like a private kingdom. Elijah had acquired it 6 months ago as part of a larger portfolio purchase, previous owners drowning in deferred maintenance and debt. He'd seen opportunity where others saw problems. That vision had built his empire. Diana's voice echoed from memory. Hospital bed, body failing, mind sharp as ever. Buy it, Eli. Make it a place where everyone truly belongs. He'd promised. 3 years keeping that promise by building things that lasted, creating communities instead of just collecting rents. Zara hummed something tuneless. Elijah's hands tightened on leather steering wheel. Last week, the librarian had followed them through 3 aisles, watching, suspicious. When Zara noticed and asked why, Elijah had explained, "Sometimes people see the cover before reading the book. They see Daddy's skin before seeing Daddy's heart." Zara had asked if that made people stupid or mean. Both, he'd answered. Usually both. Riverside Meadows gates appeared, wrought iron painted glossy black, brick columns with brass plaques announcing exclusivity, manicured lawns stretched like green carpet, the kind of development that put covenants in deeds, the kind that had probably never imagined someone like Elijah would own it. He touched the gate remote. Metal swung wide. The phantom glided through like it belonged because legally it did. The clubhouse sat at the development's heart. Colonial revival architecture, white columns, blue shutters, building designed to evoke plantation elegance without saying the word plantation aloud. Elijah had studied the construction documents. Original build 2003, addition 2009, roof replacement 2016. Every detail archived because documentation separated accusation from conviction. Visitor parking space, engine silent. The briefcase beside him contained 3 certified mail envelopes still sealed. Return to sender stamped across each. Ownership transfer documentation. Articles of incorporation showing Thornton Capital as registered property owner. Bank records proving the $4.6 million purchase had cleared. Everything legal and proper and completely ignored by the woman running this place as her personal fiefdom. Zara pulled out her tablet. Educational game with numbers. Elijah twisted to face her. "Remember, stay in car, doors locked, don't talk to strangers. If something feels wrong, call you." She recited it like multiplication tables. 15 minutes. 15 minutes, then ice cream. He grabbed the briefcase and stepped into June heat that hit like a physical presence. The clubhouse door stood 20 yards away. Movement flickered in a second-floor window. Someone watching. Phone buzzed. Grace Montgomery, his executive assistant. Board meeting moved to 3 p.m. "Need you," he typed. "Handle it." Grace had been with him 9 years. She knew which battles required his presence. The clubhouse door opened before he reached it. A woman emerged with the purposeful stride of someone accustomed to obedience. Mid-50s. Blonde hair pulled into what probably had a French name. Blazer despite the humidity. Heels clicking concrete with metronomic precision. Her eyes traveled from his face to the Rolls-Royce to his briefcase and back. The calculation happened in microseconds. Black man. Expensive vehicle. No appointment. Her brain produced suspicious. "I don't believe we've met." The smile belonged in hostage negotiations. "I'm Constance Hargrove, president of the Riverside Meadows Homeowners Association." Elijah set down the briefcase, extended his hand. She looked at it half a second too long before accepting. Her grip competitive, his deliberately neutral. "Elijah Thornton, I'm here to review property documents." The smile flickered. I don't recall any scheduled appointments. Our office hours are clearly posted. I sent 3 certified letters to this address. His voice stayed level. 18 years of conference rooms had taught him whoever raises their voice first loses. All signed for by Lillian Reeves. All containing ownership transfer documentation. Constance's expression rearranged into patient condescension. Mr. Thornton, there's clearly been confusion. Perhaps if you called ahead, no confusion. Thornton Capital acquired this property 6 months ago. Paperwork filed with the state. Notifications sent to the HOA as required by Georgia Code. I'm reviewing operational records, as is my legal right. Her eyes flicked to the Rolls-Royce again. Zara visible through the window, head bent over her tablet. Constance's mouth tightened into something that wasn't quite a smile. What brings someone like you to our community in a vehicle like that? The words hung between them. Someone like you. 4 words containing entire histories, redlining, sundown towns, separate but equal. Every careful euphemism white America invented to avoid saying what it meant. Elijah let silence stretch. In the phantom, Zara looked up from her tablet. Even from 20 yards, he saw her forehead crease with concern. She knew the signs. Daddy's jaw getting tight. Daddy's shoulders rigid. The way his whole body became very still before something bad happened. Someone like me. He kept tone curious. Interested. Give her rope. Please explain. Constance's face flushed. Caught. Backpedaling already. I mean unscheduled visitors. Security concerns. Luxury vehicle theft is significant in this area. Are you suggesting my vehicle is stolen? I'm suggesting proper procedures exist for reasons. Arms crossing. Body language screaming defensive. If you had legitimate business, you would have made appointments through proper channels. Elijah opened the briefcase. 3 envelopes emerged with his business card clipped to the top one. He held them where she could read certified mail labels. Return to sender. Return to sender. Return to sender. All signed L. Reeves with dates spanning January through March. These are the proper channels, Mrs. Hargrove. Certified notification sent to the HOA office. Would you like to explain why they were returned unopened? Eyes widening. Genuine surprise or excellent acting. I never saw these. If Lillian received them, she should have brought them to my attention. Then perhaps you should speak with Ms. Reeves before making accusations about my business being illegitimate. The word hung. Illegitimate. Like his presence, like his ownership, like everything he'd built from Cleveland projects to Forbes 400. Constance's phone appeared in her hand. Manicured nails, French tips, probably $80 at some salon serving champagne. She held it like a weapon. Sir, I'm trying to be reasonable, but luxury vehicle theft is serious. I have responsibility to protect this community. If you can't provide adequate identification, I provided 3 certified letters containing corporate documentation and proof of purchase. What additional identification do you require? Her thumb moved across the screen. I'm going to verify your story with police, for everyone's safety. Elijah's heart rate stayed steady. 18 years as the only black man in conference rooms full of white executives had taught him this dance. Stay calm, keep hands visible, document everything, survive. But Zara was watching, 8 years old and learning that sometimes doing everything right still wasn't enough. Mrs. Hargrove, I'm asking you to reconsider. My daughter is in that vehicle. She's 8. Calling police because you don't believe I have legitimate business here is, if you had legitimate business, you would have scheduled an appointment. Finger hovering over screen. Your daughter's presence doesn't change the fact that you've shown up unannounced in a vehicle worth more than most people make in 5 years, refusing to leave when asked. I haven't refused anything. I stated my business, showed documentation. You're escalating. But her finger was already moving. Call connecting. Elijah heard faint ringing through her phone's speaker. In the Rolls-Royce, Zara's face pressed against glass. Her mouth moved. Daddy. The word came through distance and 3 years of missing her mother. 911. Operator's voice crackled. DeKalb County Emergency Services, what's your emergency? Constance's eyes never left Elijah's face. Yes, I'm calling from Riverside Meadows, the clubhouse parking lot. I have a black male approximately 6 feet tall, mid to late 30s, driving a white Rolls-Royce that I believe may be stolen. He's refusing to leave the property, and he has a child in the vehicle with him. Each word a nail. Each sentence a coffin. Elijah had read the statistics. New outcomes. Philando Castile, Samuel DuBose, Walter Scott. The list continued endlessly. Yes, he's still here, in the parking lot. No, he hasn't been aggressive, but I'd feel safer if officers could respond quickly. Pause. Listening. Constance Hargrove. H-A-R-R-O. I'm the HOA president. Thank you. Call ended with satisfied nod, like she'd accomplished something, protected her community, done civic duty. Elijah forced hands to unclench, forced voice to stay level. You just told 911 there's a black man with a child in a potentially stolen vehicle. Do you understand what you've done? I've protected my residents. Phone slipping back into blazer pocket. If you have nothing to hide, police will verify your story and you'll be free to go. Free to go. Like he was already detained, already guilty, already convicted by a white woman's fear and a 911 call and 4 centuries of history. Elijah walked back to the Phantom, each step measured, nothing sudden, nothing threatening. He opened the rear door where Zara sat frozen with her tablet, her eyes too wide, voice too small. Daddy, what's happening? The question shouldn't exist. 8-year-old girls should ask about science fairs and ice cream flavors and whether binary stars could have planets. Not this. Never this. Some police officers are going to talk to Daddy. He kept his voice steady. Same voice for bedtime stories and scraped knees and nightmares about losing Mommy. There's been a misunderstanding. Like at the library. Her hands twisted the tablet. When the lady followed us? Worse than the library. So much worse. But he couldn't say that. Couldn't let her see his pulse hammering. Couldn't show fear. Police are coming to help clear things up, but I need you to stay in the car. Keep doors locked. Stay very calm. Can you do that for Daddy? Zara nodded. The gap in her teeth showed when she pressed lips together, trying to be brave. 8 years old and already learning to be twice as good for half as much. Is it because we're black, barely above a whisper? Elijah's throat closed. Diana had asked once back when Zara was still in diapers, how will you explain it to her? How do you tell your baby girl that the world will hate her for her skin? That lady is confused, Princess. She doesn't understand why we're here. Police will help explain. A lie. Police might help, or might not. Might see a black man in an expensive car and think drug dealer. Might see a child in the back seat and think trafficking. Might see him reach for documentation and think weapon. I'm scared. Zara's voice broke on the last word. Elijah wanted to gather her up, wanted to drive away and never look back, wanted to protect her from every sharp edge in a world designed to cut people who looked like them. Me too, baby girl. The truth slipped out before he could stop it. But we're going to be okay. Daddy's going to make sure we're okay. He kissed her forehead and closed the door gently, locked it with the key fob, watched her small face through tinted glass as he walked back toward the clubhouse. Constance stood exactly where he'd left her, arms crossed, expression righteous, convinced she'd done the right thing. A small crowd had gathered. 3 people, then 5, then 8. Residents drawn by drama like moths to flame. An older white man with silver hair, a young black man holding a toddler, a middle-aged black couple, all watching, several holding phones up to record. Elijah found a bench near the clubhouse entrance and sat, briefcase beside him, hands visible in his lap, every movement deliberate, every gesture calculated to communicate non-threat. The statistics ran through his head unbidden. Black men 3.5 times more likely to be killed by police than white men. 46% of wrongful convictions involved black defendants. Average settlement for police shooting $0.7 million. Zara would be well provided for if this went wrong. He hated that he knew those numbers. Hated that they mattered. Hated that he was sitting on a bench waiting for police to verify that he owned property worth $4.6 million because a white woman couldn't believe a black man belonged in her neighborhood. Diana's voice, "This is exactly why we need to change things. Buy the property, make it different, show them a better way." Except Diana wasn't here anymore, and Elijah was alone with their daughter watching from a car while strangers recorded what might be his last moments. The silver-haired man approached, 60s, maybe early 70s, dressed like a professor, cardigan despite the heat. "Constance, what's going on here?" Her voice carried across the parking lot. "I'm handling a security situation, Wendell. This man showed up claiming he has business here, refusing to provide proper identification." Elijah's jaw clenched. Refusing. The word choice deliberate. Painting him as combative, unreasonable, dangerous. "I never refused identification." His voice stayed level. Years of depositions and hostile acquisitions had trained him for this. "Mrs. Hargrove never asked to see my ID. She saw my car, made assumptions, and called 911. Wendell looked between them, uncertainty creasing his weathered face. "Maybe we should all just calm down and wait for police to sort this out." Calm down. As if Elijah's heart wasn't racing, as if his daughter wasn't terrified in the back seat, as if history wasn't full of black men who stayed calm and got killed anyway. "That's exactly what I intend to do." He folded hands in lap. "Wait for police and provide documentation proving I have every legal right to be here." Constance made a sound halfway between laugh and scoff. "We'll see how confident you are when you have to explain yourself to the authorities." The authorities. Like they were neutral arbiters of truth instead of human beings carrying guns and implicit biases and the weight of a criminal justice system that incarcerated black men at 5 times the rate of white men. Sirens in the distance, growing louder. The crowd swelled to 15 people. 20. The young black man with the toddler caught Elijah's eye and nodded once. Solidarity. "We see you. We know." The patrol car appeared at the gates, white with blue stripes. DeKalb County Sheriff written across the door, light bar flashing but no siren, engine cut. For a moment, nothing happened. In the phantom Zara's face was a pale oval against the window, hands pressed flat against glass. Elijah tried to smile at her, tried to project confidence he didn't feel. Officer's door opened. Deputy Derek Jackson stepped out, early 40s, black, built like someone who'd played college football, hand resting on belt near radio. Not on weapon, not yet. Relief and terror warred in Elijah's chest. Black officer might mean understanding, might mean someone who'd lived this same reality, or might mean someone working twice as hard to prove he wasn't biased, someone who'd throw the book at a black suspect just to show he treated everyone equally. Jackson's eyes swept the scene, took in the crowd, the Rolls-Royce, the man on the bench, the child in the car. His expression gave away nothing. Constance rushed forward immediately, heels clicking, voice pitched to Carrie. "Officer, thank you for coming so quickly. This man is trespassing. He showed up in that vehicle claiming he has business here, but he won't identify himself properly. I believe the car may be stolen, and I want him removed from the property immediately." Jackson's gaze moved past her, settled on Elijah. Assessment happening in microseconds. The suit, the posture, the calm expression. Then to the Rolls-Royce where Zara sat frozen. Something shifted in Jackson's face. Recognition. Not of Elijah specifically, but of the situation, of what was happening here. He approached the bench. Elijah remained seated, hands visible, breathing steady. "Sir, I'm Deputy Jackson. I understand there's been some confusion about your presence here." Word choice mattered. Confusion. Not trespassing. Not theft. Confusion. "Good afternoon, Deputy." Elijah's voice carried courtroom precision. "My name is Elijah Thornton. I'm CEO of Thornton Capital Group. We acquired this property 6 months ago. I'm here to review HOA operational records, as is my right under Georgia property statute. May I see some identification?" Of course. Elijah reached for his jacket, slowly. "My license is in my inside pocket. I'm going to reach for it now with my right hand." Jackson nodded. "Go ahead." License came out smooth. Elijah handed it over without sudden movement. Jackson examined it with professional care, pulled his radio and called it in. Response crackled back within 30 seconds. "License valid. Registered owner of a 2022 Rolls-Royce Phantom Georgia plates." Jackson looked at the car, then back at Elijah. "That your vehicle, Mr. Thornton?" "Yes, sir." "And the child inside?" "My daughter Zara. She's 8. I picked her up from school and told her to wait in the car while I conducted business." Jackson's jaw tightened, almost imperceptible. But Elijah saw it, understood it. This man knew exactly what was happening, had probably lived his own version 100 times. Constance inserted herself between them. "Deputy, he still hasn't explained why he's here without an appointment. I'm the HOA president. Everything related to this property goes through me." "Ma'am, I need you to step back." Jackson's voice stayed professional. "Mr. Thornton, you mentioned acquiring the property." Elijah opened the briefcase. Documentation came out in order. Articles of incorporation, certificate of ownership, bank transfer records showing $4.6 million changing hands. All stamped and notarized and completely legal. Thornton Capital purchased Riverside Meadows from Hartwell Properties LLC on January 3rd of this year. We sent 3 certified notifications to the HOA office as required by Georgia Code Title 44. All 3 were signed for by Lillian Reeves. None were opened. He held up the envelopes, return to sender stamped across each. Jackson took them, examined signatures and dates. "Mrs. Hargrove, did you receive these notifications?" Constance's mouth opened and closed, color rising in her face. Lillian handles the mail. If she received them, she should have. I'm asking if you were aware that the property had been sold." "No. The board would have been informed. We would have had meetings. There would have been announcements." A woman emerged from the clubhouse. Mid-30s, brown hair pulled back in practical ponytail, face pale. She walked toward them with careful steps of someone approaching a crime scene. "Mrs. Hargrove, I gave you those letters." Her voice shook, but held. "All 3 of them. January 15th, February 3rd, March 1st. You told me they were routine corporate paperwork. You said you'd handle it." Constance spun toward her. "Lillian, this is not the time. I asked you about them twice." Lillian Reeves's hands twisted together, but her voice grew stronger. "You told me to mind my own business and focus on my actual job." The crowd murmured. Phones captured every word. Jackson's expression remained neutral, but his eyes had gone very sharp. "Ms. Reeves, you're saying you delivered these letters directly to Mrs. Hargrove?" "Yes, sir. I gave them to her personally, put them on her desk, asked if she wanted me to open them. She said no." Constance's face cycled through expressions. Shock, anger, fear. "That's not your misremembering. I'm not." Lillian's voice cracked. "I kept copies. Time-stamped photos of me handing you each envelope. It's all in the office files." Jackson turned back to Elijah. "Mr. Thornton, it appears you do have legal standing to be here. Mrs. Hargrove calling 911 on the property owner and reporting a potentially stolen vehicle constitutes filing a false report." "I had legitimate concerns." Desperation crept into Constance's voice. "He showed up unannounced in an expensive car. The car is registered to him. He provided documentation of ownership. What legitimate concern justified reporting a potential theft?" Silence, complete and crushing. Elijah stood slowly, briefcase in hand. "Deputy Jackson, I'd like to file a formal complaint. Mrs. Hargrove called 911 and reported my vehicle as potentially stolen. My 8-year-old daughter witnessed the entire incident. This was racial profiling, pure and simple." "That's ridiculous." Constance's voice pitched higher. "I never said anything about race. You didn't have to." Wendell stepped forward. His voice carried the weight of 7 decades. "We all heard you, Constance. Someone like you. A vehicle like that. You saw a black man in an expensive car and decided something was wrong." The crowd's murmur grew louder. Agreement. Condemnation. The young black man with the toddler spoke up. "How many times, Constance, how many black families have you called the police on?" Constance's face had gone from red to white. "I've never—" "This is absurd, Mr. Thornton." Jackson's voice cut through noise. "I'm going to need you to come to the station to file that formal complaint. You're free to go about your business here. Mrs. Hargrove, I strongly suggest you consult with your attorney." Elijah looked at the phantom, at Zara's small face pressed against glass, at the crowd of strangers who'd watched a white woman call police on a black man for the crime of existing in a place she thought he didn't belong. "Deputy, I appreciate your professionalism. I'll be requesting a full audit of HOA operations. Given Mrs. Hargrove's apparent disregard for proper notification procedures, I have concerns about how this community has been managed." He walked toward the car, each step measured, the crowd parted, phones still recording, witnesses to something they'd probably discuss at dinner parties for months. Zara's door opened. She tumbled into his arms, 8 years old and shaking. He held her the way he'd held her the day Diana died, the way he'd held her through nightmares and thunderstorms and every moment when the world proved itself cruel. "It's okay, Princess. It's okay now." But it wasn't okay. Would never be okay. Not in a country where a white woman's suspicion carried more weight than a black man's documentation. Not in a world where an 8-year-old girl had to watch her father prove his humanity to police because someone decided he looked suspicious. Wendell approached, hands shoved in cardigan pockets. "Mr. Thornton, I owe you an apology. Not just for today. For every day I've lived here and watched Constance target families who didn't look like her. For every time I stayed silent." Elijah settled Zara in the back seat, made sure her seatbelt clicked, turned to face the older man. "Why now? Why speak up today?" Wendell's eyes found Zara. "Because my granddaughter is her age, and I want her to grow up in a world where people like me don't stay silent, while people like Constance terrorize their neighbors." "How many families?" Elijah's voice dropped. "You said you watched her target people. How many?" "I don't know. Dozens. Over the 6 years she's been president." Wendell pulled a hand through silver hair. "I taught history for 40 years. Spent my whole career teaching students about civil rights, about standing up, about courage required to speak truth to power." He paused. let words settle. And then I came home every day and watched Constance Hargrove terrorize my neighbors, and I said nothing. His hands gripped the chair back in front of him, knuckles white. I was a coward. For 6 years, I chose comfort over courage. That ends today. Lillian joined them, still pale but standing straighter now. Mr. Thornton, there's something you should know. Constance didn't just ignore your letters. She's been ignoring complaints for years. 52 families have filed grievances with the HOA, all of them minorities or single mothers, all dismissed without investigation. Elijah's mind shifted into the mode that had built a $200 million empire. Documentation, patterns, evidence. Do you have records? Everything. 6 years of complaints, all filed electronically, all time-stamped. Constance told me to keep them in case of lawsuits, but she never thought anyone would actually look. I'm looking. Elijah pulled out his phone. Give me your email. Send me everything you have. Every complaint, every communication, every financial record you can access. Lillian's fingers flew across her own phone. The finances are wrong too. Contractor fees up 300% in 2 years. A landscaping company supposedly getting paid $9,300 monthly, but I've never seen anyone from them. Reserve fund dropped from $198,000 to $37,000. The pieces clicked together. Discrimination, embezzlement. A woman who'd built a small kingdom and ruled it with fear and selective enforcement. Elijah's phone buzzed. Victoria Blackwell. Saw the news. Are you and Zara okay? He typed back. We're fine. Clear my schedule tomorrow. This is going to take time. Constance stood alone now near the clubhouse entrance. A lawyer had appeared from somewhere, probably responding to a panicked call. They spoke in urgent whispers. Her hands gestured wildly. His face wore the expression of a lawyer realizing his client was comprehensively screwed. Jackson approached Elijah one more time. Mr. Thornton, for what it's worth, I'm sorry about this. You shouldn't have had to go through it. But I did. And so will the next black man who shows up here, and the next, unless things change. Elijah met the deputy's eyes. How many times have you been called to Riverside Meadows for suspicious persons reports? Jackson's jaw worked. More than I'd like to admit, almost always involving residents or visitors of color. Then help me change it. Official statement on record, pattern of discriminatory 911 calls, whatever you can document that supports a civil rights complaint. I'll see what I can do. Elijah climbed into the Phantom. Zara had her tablet out but wasn't looking at it, just holding it like a security blanket. Can we go home, Daddy? Soon, Princess. First, we need to make sure this never happens to anyone else. He started the engine, smooth and silent. $200,000 of German engineering responding to the lightest touch. The kind of car that was supposed to signal success, achievement. The American dream made manifest in leather and steel. Instead, it had been evidence, proof of guilt, a white woman's reason to dial 911 and set in motion a chain of events that could have ended with his daughter watching him die. Wendell tapped on the window. Elijah lowered it. Mr. Thornton, I know I have no right to ask, but I want to help. I've been a coward for 6 years. I'd like a chance to do better. Elijah studied the older man's face, saw genuine remorse, genuine determination, also saw the privilege of someone who could choose when to be brave, who could stay silent for 6 years and still sleep at night. But allies mattered, even imperfect ones, especially imperfect ones who understood their complicity. Can you gather testimony, other residents who've been targeted, people willing to go on record about Constance's discrimination? I can do that. Then do it. We're going to need every voice we can get. Elijah raised the window. Put the car in drive. The phantom moved forward with the inevitability of justice that had been delayed for 6 years, but was finally coming. In the rearview mirror, Constance Hargrove stood in the parking lot she'd ruled like a fiefdom, watched the black man she'd called police on drive away in the car she'd reported stolen, realized perhaps for the first time that some books couldn't be judged by their covers, and some covers belonged to volumes that would rewrite everything she thought she knew. The ice cream shop on Peachtree Street had witnessed countless childhood celebrations. Pink walls hand-painted with stars, a menu offering 43 flavors and unlimited toppings, the kind of establishment where sugar temporarily erased the sharp edges of reality. Elijah watched Zara construct a precarious tower of chocolate chip mint with cookie dough pieces and rainbow sprinkles. 3 scoops as promised. She attacked it with focused intensity that suggested she was trying to forget the previous 2 hours through sheer force of will and frozen dairy. His phone sat face down on the small table between them. It had buzzed 23 times during the drive over. He'd ignored every notification. Right now, the only thing that mattered was the 8-year-old across from him who kept stealing glances at his face to verify he was genuinely okay. "Daddy, why do some people decide to hate us before they even know us?" The question emerged between bites of ice cream. Matter of fact, like asking about weather patterns or homework assignments. Elijah's spoon stopped halfway to his mouth. "They don't hate us specifically, Princess. They hate what they think we represent. What's that? Change, progress, everything their grandparents fought to keep out of neighborhoods exactly like Riverside Meadows." But Zara didn't need that answer yet. Wouldn't fully comprehend it even if he provided it. "We represent people who challenge their comfortable version of the world. And that frightens them." Zara's forehead creased, ice cream temporarily forgotten. "But frightened people call police. That seems incorrect." God, she was Diana's daughter, sharp as surgical steel and twice as direct. Fear makes people commit backwards actions, makes them dangerous even when they believe they're being protective. "Were you frightened today?" Her eyes found his. Diana's eyes. Too knowing for 8 years. The lie would be simple. Would shield her. Keep her believing Daddy was invincible and nothing could harm them as long as they remained together. But lies metastasized, grew until they crowded out truth and left only comfortable fiction. Absolutely terrified. The word emerged rough. "Every second from when that woman made the call until the deputy departed, I was so frightened I could barely construct coherent thoughts." "But you didn't demonstrate it. Because some things are more important than fear, baby girl. You remember what Mommy used to say?" Zara's lips moved silently, testing words before speaking them. "We build bridges, not walls. Bridges bigger than the sky." Precisely. And sometimes building those bridges means standing firm even when every part of you wants to flee. The ice cream had started melting. Zara attacked it with renewed determination. Chocolate smeared across her gap-toothed grin. For one perfect moment, she looked exactly like Diana had on their 3rd date when he'd taken her to this same shop and she'd ordered the most ridiculous sundae on the menu, just to make him laugh. Elijah's phone buzzed again. He flipped it over. Victoria Blackwell. "This is bigger than discrimination. Call me ASAP. Daddy has to make a quick call, okay? Stay right here where I can see you." Zara nodded, mouth too full of ice cream to speak. He stepped outside into evening heat that hadn't diminished with sunset. Atlanta in June was a sauna with traffic. Victoria answered on the first ring. "Tell me you're sitting down." "I'm standing outside an ice cream shop watching my daughter try to forget that a white woman called the cops on me." "What do you have?" Victoria's voice dropped into the tone she used for depositions and hostile negotiations. Precise, unforgiving. Lillian Reeves sent me everything she had on Riverside Meadows, financial records going back 6 years. I had my forensic accountant run preliminary numbers. Elijah's free hand found the wall, brick still warm from the day's sun. How severe. Emerald Property Services, LLC, registered April 15, 2021. Payments of $9,300 monthly for 36 months. Total $334,800. Company has no employees, no business license, no tax filings, and exactly one registered agent. Constance Hargrove. Constance Jean Hargrove. Same social security number on file with the HOA. She's been paying herself through a shell company for landscaping services that were never performed. Victoria's keyboard clicked in the background. That's felony embezzlement. 3 to 10 years in Georgia. Restitution mandatory. Elijah closed his eyes. Discrimination was one thing. Theft was another. Together they constructed a case that would obliterate Constance completely. Should obliterate her. Would obliterate her if he pushed forward. And some traitorous part of his brain whispered, "Is that what you want, to demolish a woman's life over a phone call?" Then he thought about Zara's face pressed against the phantom's window. Thought about 52 families who'd been targeted. Thought about every black family who'd moved to Riverside Meadows hoping for community and found persecution instead. I want a comprehensive audit. Every transaction, every vendor, every line item for 6 years. If she's been stealing, I want to know exactly how much and where it went. Already in progress. I'll have preliminary findings by tomorrow afternoon. Victoria paused. Elijah, this is going to get brutal. Constance will fight. People will choose sides. Some residents will defend her regardless of what the evidence demonstrates. Then we make the evidence impossible to deny. Through the ice cream shop window, Zara had progressed to licking melted ice cream off the bowl. Completely absorbed, briefly happy. Elijah wanted to freeze this moment, preserve it like amber before everything that came next crashed down around them. There's something else. Victoria's voice shifted. Lillian attached a file labeled Complaints Archive. 52 families over 6 years, all minorities or single mothers. All complaints dismissed without investigation. It's systematic discrimination with a paper trail. Elijah's grip tightened on the phone. Send me everything. I want to see every name, every grievance, every email where Constance buried their concerns. You're going to need more than documentation. You need witnesses, people willing to go on record about what she did to them. I'll get them. He ended the call and went back inside. Zara had chocolate smeared on her nose. He wiped it off with a napkin and gathered her into his arms. She wrapped legs around his waist like she had when she was 4, when the world was simpler and Mommy was still alive, and the worst thing that could happen was a scraped knee. Can we go home now? Her voice muffled against his shoulder. Yeah, princess. We can go home. The house felt cavernous when they arrived. 5,000 square feet of emptiness that Diana used to fill with music and laughter and the aroma of whatever elaborate recipe she'd decided to master that week. 3 years and Elijah still expected to walk in and find her in the kitchen. Still caught himself buying her favorite wine at the store. Still slept on his side of the bed like she might need the other half. He got Zara into pajamas and through teeth brushing and into bed with her stuffed elephant that had been loved nearly bald. She held onto his hand when he tried to leave. Daddy, what happens tomorrow? Tomorrow we start making things right. Will the mean lady be there? Constance Hargrove had become the mean lady, would probably remain the mean lady in Zara's memory for the rest of her life. First clear example of racism directed specifically at her family, the moment childhood innocence started fracturing. Maybe, but she can't hurt us anymore. Zara's eyes drifted closed, exhaustion winning over fear. Elijah waited until her breathing evened out before extracting his hand and closing the door to a crack. Light from the hallway spilling across her floor. Night light plugged in near her dresser. All the small protections against darkness that couldn't actually protect against anything that mattered. His office was Diana's design. She'd insisted on floor-to-ceiling bookshelves even though he did 90% of his reading digitally, had selected the leather chair that cost more than his first car, had hung the art that he didn't comprehend but appreciated, because she'd loved it. Elijah opened his laptop and pulled up the files Lillian had sent. 52 complaints organized chronologically. He started reading. Terrence Caldwell, April 2021. Black male, age 27, purchased home at 847 Riverside Lane. 3 noise complaints filed by Constance personally. Police called regarding suspicious vehicles belonging to Caldwell's visiting friends. All friends subsequently identified as black males aged 25 to 30. No citations issued, no violations found. Caldwell's request for review denied without comment. Simone Harper, June 2021. Black female, age 39, single mother of 2. Trash can left at curb 10 minutes past collection window due to work emergency. Cited for violation of aesthetic standards. Threatened with $100 per day fine and potential lien on property. Harper's appeal dismissed. Notation in Constance's handwriting. People like this need to understand consequences. Isaiah and Naomi Monroe, November 2021. Black couple, early 40s. Isaiah, a cardiologist at Emory. Naomi, a software engineer at Delta. Kwanzaa decorations on front porch cited as violation of community aesthetic guidelines. No such guideline exists in official bylaws. When Monroe's challenged citation, Constance threatened escalating fines. Decorations removed. Complaint filed requesting clarification of aesthetic standards. No response. Pattern after pattern. 52 families. 52 instances of selective enforcement and manufactured violations and racism dressed up in bureaucratic language. A systematic campaign to make anyone who didn't look like Constance Hargrove feel unwelcome in their own homes. Elijah's hands shook. Not from fear this time. From rage that had been building since the parking lot. Since Zara's terrified face in the window. Since 18 years of being the only black man in rooms full of white executives who questioned his competence before he opened his mouth. His phone showed 11:47 p.m., too late to call anyone, early enough that adrenaline would keep him awake for hours. He opened a new document and started typing. Names and dates and specific violations, building a case the way he'd built Thornton Capital, one careful brick at a time. Foundation first, structure second, proof that would withstand scrutiny. Third, by 2:00 a.m. he had a framework. By 3:30 he had an outline. By 4:15 his eyes burned too intensely to continue working. Sleep arrived in fragments, dreams where Zara watched him through glass while Constance's voice echoed, "Someone like you, someone like you, someone like you." Morning came with birdsong and notifications. Grace Montgomery morning briefing at 9 a.m. pushed Virginia closing to Friday. Victoria Blackwell forensic prelim attached call when you see this. Wendell Grayson collected testimony from 11 residents more coming. Elijah showered and dressed while Zara still slept. Made coffee that tasted like battery acid and necessity. Opened Victoria's attachment. The forensic accountant's report was 37 pages. Elijah skipped to the summary. $334,800 paid to Emerald Property Services, LLC, between April 2021 and March 2024. Company Incorporated, April 15, 2020. Registered Agent Constance Jean Hargrove. 1247 Riverside Meadows Drive, Atlanta, GA 30328. No business license, no tax returns filed, no employees registered. Bank account opened April 16, 2021 at SunTrust. All deposits from Riverside Meadows HOA operating account. All withdrawals to personal checking account belonging to Constance Hargrove. It was embezzlement so blatant it bordered on stupidity, like Constance had never imagined anyone would look. Never thought she'd be questioned, never believed consequences applied to people like her. Elijah's phone rang, Victoria's name on the screen. Tell me you slept. 4 hours, more than I anticipated. He carried the phone to the window overlooking the backyard Diana had designed. Native plants and a small pond with koi she'd named after Supreme Court justices. The forensic report is damning. It's a felony conviction waiting to happen. Question is what you want to do with it. Victoria's chair creaked. She was in her office already, probably had been since 6. We can take this to the DA, get criminal charges filed. Constance goes to prison, community gets restitution, you make an example. Or we use it as leverage. Force her resignation, demand full restitution, implement reforms that prevent this from happening again. She avoids prison but loses everything else that matters to her. Elijah watched the koi circle each other, Ruth, Bader, and Thurgood and Sonia moving in patterns Diana had loved. She'd fed them every morning, talked to them about her day, believed they understood more than fish had any right to. I want justice, not just revenge. Justice for whom the 52 families she targeted, the residents she stole from your daughter who watched you nearly get arrested, all of them, none of them. Justice was a word people threw around like it meant something concrete, when really it was as fluid as water and twice as difficult to hold. I want Constance held accountable. I want systems changed so the next HOA president can't pull the same garbage. And I want every family she hurt to know someone saw what happened and cared enough to fight. Victoria's silence stretched 3 seconds, 4. Then we're going to need those families to speak. On record, publicly. You can't fight this battle alone. Wendell's collecting testimony, says he has 11 residents willing to talk. 11 isn't sufficient. You need 20, 30. Enough that even Constance's supporters can't dismiss it as coincidence. Victoria's keyboard clicked. I'm drafting a letter, official notification that we're conducting an investigation into HOA operations. Gives us legal cover to interview residents and request documentation. Footsteps on the stairs. Zara emerging from her room with bedhead and yesterday's trauma etched in the way she moved. Too careful. Too quiet. 8-year-olds shouldn't move like they were trying not to be noticed. I have to go. Zara's awake. Elijah. Victoria's voice stopped him. What happened yesterday was wrong. What Constance has been doing for 6 years is worse. But exposing it is going to hurt. Make sure you're ready for that. He wasn't ready. Would never be ready. But ready and necessary weren't the same thing. Breakfast was cereal and orange juice, and Zara asking if she could stay home from school. Elijah wanted to say yes, wanted to wrap her in blankets and pretend the world outside their door didn't exist. Instead, he said, "You can't hide from difficult things, princess. You face them and prove they don't define you." She ate her Cheerios in silence. Proof that 8-year-old wisdom only stretched so far. The drive to school was quiet. Zara stared out the window at passing houses and strip malls and other children walking to bus stops. Normal morning for everyone except them. Will the other kids know? Her voice barely audible over the radio. Elijah's hands tightened on the wheel. Of course they'd know. Their parents had seen the videos by now, probably discussed it over dinner. Constance calls cops on black man in Rolls-Royce. Some would be sympathetic. Others would question why Elijah had escalated instead of just leaving, blame the victim for making the racist uncomfortable. Maybe. If they ask, tell them Daddy was doing his job and someone made a mistake. What if they say you deserved it? The question landed like a physical blow. She'd already thought through this scenario, already prepared herself for classmates parroting their parents' prejudices, already understood that yesterday's parking lot was just the beginning. Then you remember what Mommy always said, other people's opinions don't change your truth. He walked her to the classroom door, watched her slip inside and take her seat next to Sophie, who smiled and showed Zara something on her tablet. Normal third-grade morning. For a moment, it almost felt like yesterday hadn't happened. Elijah's phone buzzed before he reached the parking lot. Unknown number. He almost declined, then recognized the area code. Riverside Meadows. Mr. Thornton. This is Lillian Reeves. Her voice shook. Elijah stopped walking. Ms. Reeves, is everything all right? Constance knows I sent you the files. She called me at 6 this morning, told me I'm fired effective immediately, said I violated confidentiality agreements, and she's considering legal action. The fear in Lillian's voice was palpable through the phone. Single woman in her 30s. Resume gap from working for a woman who'd just threatened to sue her. Job market in Atlanta wasn't easy, even without legal problems. She can't fire you for reporting illegal activity. Georgia's a whistleblower protection state. She said the files were privileged HOA documents, that I had no authority to release them without board approval. Lillian's breath hitched. Mr. Thornton, I can't afford a lawyer. I can't fight her. I just wanted to do the right thing. You did do the right thing, and I'm not going to let her punish you for it. Elijah's mind shifted into the mode that had closed $217 million in deals. Do you have an employment contract? Yes. 3-year term, signed in January. Email it to me. Also, any communications regarding your termination. Constance just made a massive mistake and we're going to make her regret it. Silence. Then, you'd really fight for me. You barely know me. You stood up when it mattered. That's all I need to know. Elijah reached his car. In the meantime, document everything. Every call, every email, every conversation about your firing, timestamps and details. Can you do that? Yes. Lillian's voice strengthened. Mr. Thornton, there's something else. Constance called an emergency board meeting this morning. 9 a.m. She's telling people you're trying to destroy the community, that you showed up making accusations and threatening lawsuits. Of course she was. Classic playbook. Accuse the victim of being the aggressor. Paint herself as the defender of community values under attack by an outsider with an agenda. Let her spin whatever story she wants. Truth has a way of surfacing. He ended the call and immediately dialed Victoria. Constance just fired Lillian Reeves. Wrongful termination whistleblower retaliation, pick your statute. I want her buried in litigation. Slow down. What happened? Elijah relayed the conversation. Victoria listened without interrupting. Her silence after he finished lasted exactly 5 seconds. She's panicking. People who panic make mistakes. Victoria's chair creaked. I'll draft a cease and desist regarding Lillian's termination. If Constance doesn't reinstate her within 48 hours, we file suit. Wrongful termination retaliation violation of Georgia whistleblower statutes. It'll keep her lawyers busy while we build the bigger case. How long until we can go public with the embezzlement? Need the full forensic audit first. Another 24 hours. I don't recommend rushing it. Defense attorneys love attacking sloppy forensics. Elijah's jaw clenched. 24 hours of constant spinning narratives. 24 hours of her poisoning opinion against him. 24 hours of families who'd been hurt, wondering if anyone actually cared. What about the discrimination complaints? Can we release those? Lillian's files are sufficient. 52 documented complaints over 6 years, all targeting minorities or single mothers, all dismissed without investigation. That's pattern evidence even without victim testimony. Victoria paused. Question is whether you want to play defense or offense. Meaning we can respond to Constance's narrative quietly, file our lawsuit, let the process work, hope justice prevails. Or we can go loud. Press conference. Release the complaint archive. Make this a public reckoning instead of a private legal battle. Elijah thought about Zara asking if the other kids would know. Thought about 18 years of being twice as good for half as much. Thought about every time he'd chosen the quiet path because making noise meant becoming a target. Then he thought about Constance's voice on the 911 call. Black male, potentially stolen vehicle, child in the car. Set up the press conference. Tomorrow morning. I want every news outlet in Atlanta there. Victoria's approval came through in the tone shift. I'll handle logistics. You focus on getting testimony. We need faces and names and stories that make this real for people watching on TV. Wendell Grayson answered on the third ring. Background noise suggested he was already making calls. Mr. Thornton, I was about to contact you. 16 residents now willing to provide testimony. Several more considering it but worried about retaliation. Tell them Constance just fired Lillian Reeves for helping me. Tell them retaliation is already happening and the only way to stop it is if enough people stand together. That might scare them away. Or it might make them angry enough to act. Fear only works when you're alone. Get me 20 names by tonight. People willing to speak on camera about what Constance did to them. Wendell's hesitation was brief. I'll try. Don't try. Do it. Because tomorrow morning we're going public with everything, and I need those families standing behind me when we do. The rest of the morning passed in controlled chaos. Grace rescheduled 3 meetings and forwarded 2 acquisition proposals that needed review. Elijah ignored them all. Thornton Capital could run without him for 48 hours. This couldn't. Victoria sent the cease and desist at 10:37 a.m. Constance's lawyer responded at 11:14 with threats of his own. By noon, Victoria had filed suit in Fulton County Superior Court. Wrongful termination, whistleblower retaliation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, demanding Lillian's immediate reinstatement plus damages. Elijah's phone rang constantly. Reporters who'd gotten his number somehow. Residents calling to express support or outrage in equal measure. One voicemail from a man claiming Elijah was destroying property values and should be ashamed. Another from a woman saying she'd been waiting 6 years for someone to stand up to Constance. At 2:15 p.m., Wendell sent a text. 23 families willing to speak. Attached document with names and contact information. Elijah called the first name on the list. Terrence Caldwell answered warily. Mr. Caldwell, my name is Elijah Thornton. I own Riverside Meadows. Yesterday, Constance Hargrove called the police on me. Today, I'm exposing everything she's done to families like yours. Wendell Grayson said you might be willing to share your story. Silence stretched. Then, what good would it do I filed complaints? Nobody cared. Because nobody with power was listening. That changes now. You say that. But once you get what you want, once Constance is gone, and you've proven your point, what happens to us? We still have to live here. The question cut to the heart of it. Elijah could make noise and file lawsuits and hold press conferences, but these families had to navigate the aftermath, had to face neighbors who'd supported Constance, had to wonder if the next HOA president would be any better. I can't promise everything gets fixed overnight. Can't guarantee perfect community harmony. What I can promise is that the system changes, that complaints get investigated, that rules get enforced equally, that nobody else gets targeted for the color of their skin. Terrence's breath crackled through the phone. She called the cops on my friends 3 times. 3 times for sitting on my porch drinking beer. Same thing white residents do every weekend, but somehow, when we do it, it's suspicious activity. Tomorrow morning, I'm holding a press conference. Every news outlet in Atlanta will be there. I'm releasing 6 years of buried complaints and forensic evidence of embezzlement. I want you there. Want your face on camera when you tell people what Constance did to you. My son Jaden is 3 years old. I don't want him growing up seeing his father on TV talking about racism. Then do it so he grows up in a neighborhood where he doesn't have to experience it. The silence this time lasted 15 seconds. What time tomorrow? 9 a.m., Riverside Meadows Clubhouse. I'll be there. 22 more calls. 22 variations of the same conversation. Fear and anger and cautious hope that maybe this time speaking up would actually matter. By 6:00 p.m., Elijah had commitments from 19 families. Enough to make a statement. Enough that Constance couldn't dismiss it as isolated incidents. He picked Zara up from after-school care at 6:30. She was quiet during the drive home. He waited until they were in the driveway before asking, "How was school, princess?" "Sophie asked if you were a criminal." Elijah's hands froze on the steering wheel. "What did you tell her?" "That you're the smartest, bravest person I know and her mom is wrong." Pride and heartbreak warred in his chest. 8 years old and already defending her father against accusations that would follow him his entire life. "Did Sophie believe you?" Zara shrugged, too casual. "She said her mom saw the video and said you probably deserved it. I told her that was stupid, and now Sophie isn't talking to me." The matter-of-fact delivery made it worse somehow. Like Zara had already accepted that standing up meant losing friends, that defending truth meant being isolated. "I'm sorry you lost a friend over this. She wasn't really my friend if she thinks that." Zara unbuckled her seatbelt. "Can we have pizza for dinner? I don't want to think about mean people anymore." They ordered pizza and watched a movie about a girl who built a robot. Zara fell asleep on the couch halfway through. Elijah carried her upstairs and tucked her in without waking her, stood in her doorway watching her breathe and wondering if he was doing the right thing. Going public meant exposure, meant Zara's face potentially on camera, meant other kids asking questions and making comments and forcing her to explain why her father was fighting with the HOA president. But staying quiet meant letting Constance win, meant 52 families would continue wondering if anyone cared, meant the next black family who moved to Riverside Meadows might face the same persecution. His phone buzzed. Victoria press conference confirmed 9 a.m. tomorrow. Channel 2511 and WSB Radio. Atlanta Journal-Constitution sending a reporter. "You ready for this?" Elijah looked at his sleeping daughter. Thought about Diana saying, "Buy it, Eli. Make it a place where everyone truly belongs." He typed, "Ready or not, it's happening." Saturday morning arrived with the weight of inevitability. Elijah woke at 5:30, showered, dressed in his best navy suit, the one Diana had selected for their 10th anniversary. He made breakfast for Zara, who appeared at 6:45 asking if she could come to the press conference. "It might be intense, princess. Lots of cameras and questions." "I want to be there. When you stood up to the mean lady I was watching, I want to watch you again." He couldn't deny her, wouldn't deny her. This was her fight too. They arrived at Riverside Meadows at 8:30. News vans already filled the parking lot, reporters checking equipment, cameras on tripods. At least 40 people gathered near the clubhouse entrance residence who'd shown up to witness Constance's public reckoning. Victoria met them at the car. 19 families confirmed. They're waiting inside. Forensic report finalized $334,800 embezzled. "We have everything we need." Elijah took Zara's hand and walked toward the clubhouse. Cameras turned, reporters shouted questions. He ignored them all until he reached the microphone Victoria had set up on the clubhouse steps. The crowd quieted. Elijah's voice carried across the parking lot with calm authority. "Good morning. 2 days ago, I came to Riverside Meadows to conduct legitimate business. I was accused of theft, reported to police, and threatened with arrest, all because the HOA president couldn't believe a black man might own this property. He paused, let the words land. What I discovered goes far beyond one incident. For 6 years, Constance Hargrove has systematically targeted minority residents and single mothers. 52 families filed complaints. All 52 were dismissed without investigation. Behind him, the projection screen lit up with spreadsheet data. Names and dates and grievances. Constance's handwritten notes visible in margins. People like this need consequences. These people don't belong. Victoria stepped forward with a document folder 3 inches thick. We've also uncovered financial irregularities. $334,800 paid to a shell company owned by Mrs. Hargrove over 3 years. Funds stolen from the community she claimed to protect. We're calling for immediate criminal investigation. The crowd erupted. Gasps and shouts and camera flashes. Somewhere in the back, Constance stood with her attorney face draining of color. Elijah raised one hand. Silence fell. 19 families are here today to share their experiences. I want you to hear directly from them what it's like to live under leadership that sees your skin color before your humanity. One by one, they spoke. Terrence describing police calls on his friends. Simone explaining the trash can violation that nearly cost her home. Isaiah and Naomi recounting their daughter's tears over forbidden Kwanzaa decorations. Each testimony a nail. Each story proof that Constance had built her presidency on prejudice and profit. Reporters asked questions. Elijah answered with precision. The press conference lasted 47 minutes. By the time it ended, the video had already started spreading across social media. Victoria's phone buzzed. She checked it and smiled grimly. District Attorney's office is calling. They want the forensic report. This is moving faster than I expected. Elijah looked at Zara, who stood beside him holding his hand. She'd watched everything, heard everything. And when a reporter asked how she felt about what happened to her father, she'd stepped to the microphone and said, "My daddy says we build bridges, not walls. Bridges bigger than the sky." The clip would go viral by noon. A gap-toothed 8-year-old teaching adults about courage and community. As they walked to the car, Wendell approached. The board scheduled an emergency meeting. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., they want to discuss the allegations and vote on next steps. Tomorrow? Elijah's mind was already calculating. That's fast. Constance is in free fall. The board wants distance before she drags them down too. Wendell's expression was grim. This is what accountability looks like. It's not always pretty. No, it wasn't pretty, but it was necessary. And as Elijah drove away from Riverside Meadows with his daughter singing softly in the back seat, he allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, they were building something that would last. Something bigger than the sky. Sunday afternoon, 2 p.m. The conference room at Riverside Meadows could hold 80 people comfortably. 163 had crowded inside. They lined the walls, sat on folding chairs brought from storage, stood in the doorway with phones held high. The air conditioning struggled against body heat and anticipation. Elijah stood near the front with Victoria on his left and Zara on his right. His daughter wore the blue dress Diana had bought 2 birthdays ago, too short now, but Zara refused to surrender it. She sat between Wendell and Victoria, hands folded in her lap exactly the way her mother had taught her during church services they no longer attended. Constance entered at 1:57 p.m. Richard Ashford guided her by the elbow like she might collapse without support. Her blazer hung differently than it had 3 days ago. Weight loss or defeat impossible to distinguish. She took the seat her attorney indicated and stared at the table. Elijah had spent 18 years reading rooms. Boardrooms full of executives trying to hide their tells. Negotiation tables where billions changed hands based on who blinked first. This room vibrated with something rawer than money. Anger and vindication, and the peculiar electricity that preceded reckoning. He approached the podium Victoria had arranged. Microphone unnecessary in a room this size, but symbolic. This wasn't conversation. This was testimony. "Thank you for coming." His voice carried to the back row where Terence Caldwell stood with his son Jaden perched on his shoulders. "3 days ago, I was reported to police in this parking lot. Today, we're here to discuss 6 years of systematic abuse that made that incident possible." Constance's attorney started to stand. Victoria shot him a look that said, "Try it, and see what happens." He settled back down. Elijah opened the folder Victoria had prepared. 52 complaints organized chronologically. Each one a story of humiliation. Each one proof that Constance had built her presidency on making people feel unwelcome in their own homes. Lillian Reeves worked for the HOA for 3 years. She kept meticulous records because that's what good administrators do. When I asked for documentation, she provided files showing a pattern that can't be dismissed as coincidence. Lillian stood from her seat in the 3rd row, walked to the front with careful steps of someone who'd made peace with consequences. She accepted the microphone Elijah offered. "My name is Lillian Reeves. I was HOA administrative assistant until Mrs. Hargrove fired me for providing these documents." Her voice trembled but held. "For 3 years I watched her target families. Always the same type of families. Always with the same result. Complaints dismissed. Citations issued. Police called." She pulled out a laptop, connected it to the projector Victoria had set up. The screen behind Elijah filled with spreadsheet data. Terence Caldwell, April 2021. 3 noise violations filed by Mrs. Hargrove personally. Police called regarding suspicious vehicles belonging to Mr. Caldwell's guests. Investigation revealed no violations, no excessive noise, just black men sitting on a porch. Lillian's fingers moved across keys. Next entry. Simone Harper, June 2021. Single mother cited for leaving trash can at curb 10 minutes past collection. Threatened with $100 per day fine and property lien. White residents regularly leave trash out for hours. No citations issued. Row after row, name after name. A catalog of cruelty dressed up as community standards. Constance's face had gone gray. Ashford scribbled notes like he could somehow build defense from this wreckage. Isaiah and Naomi Monroe, November 2021. Kwanzaa decorations cited as aesthetic violation. No such rule exists in bylaws. When Monroe's challenged Mrs. Hargrove, threatened escalating fines. Lillian looked up from the screen, met Constance's eyes. "I gave you every one of these complaints. Asked what you wanted me to do about them. You wrote in the margins of the Monroe file, 'These people need to understand standards.' I still have that document." The room erupted, voices overlapping. Someone shouted that Constance should resign immediately. Someone else demanded criminal charges. Victoria raised both hands until quiet returned. Wendell Grayson stood. 72 years of teaching history had given him the kind of voice that commanded attention without volume. "My name is Wendell Grayson. I've lived in Riverside Meadows for 12 years. I taught American history for 4 decades. Spent my career teaching students about civil rights, about standing up to injustice, about the courage required to speak truth to power." He paused, let the words settle. "And then I came home every day and watched Constance Hargrove terrorize my neighbors. And I said nothing." His hands gripped the chair back in front of him, knuckles white. "I watched her call police on Terence for having friends over. I watched her threaten Simone with fines that could have cost her home. I watched her make the Monroe children feel ashamed of their heritage. And I told myself it wasn't my business, that I shouldn't get involved, that someone else would handle it." Wendell's voice cracked. I was a coward. For 6 years I chose comfort over courage. That ends today." He turned to face Constance directly. "You used fear as your weapon, made people afraid to speak up, afraid to challenge you, afraid they'd be next if they didn't stay silent. And we let you. Every resident who knew what you were doing and said nothing, we're complicit. That's on all of us." Constance's head dropped. Ashford whispered urgently in her ear. She shook her head, words too quiet to hear, but body language screaming, "I have nothing left to say." Victoria stepped forward, picked up the remote for the projector. The screen changed to different spreadsheet. This one showed money. Forensic accounting reveals additional concerns. Between April 2021 and March 2024, the HOA paid Emerald Property Services, LLC, $9,300 monthly. Total disbursement, $334,800. The numbers hung in the air, simple arithmetic that added up to theft. Emerald Property Services was incorporated April 15, 2021. It has no employees, no business license, no tax filings, no landscaping equipment, no evidence it ever performed any services. Victoria clicked to the next slide. Incorporation documents. It has exactly one registered agent, Constance Jean Hargrove. Gasps, shouts. A man in the back yelled, "She stole from us!" Victoria clicked again. Bank records, transactions highlighted in yellow. Every payment from the HOA went into Emerald's business account. Every withdrawal went directly into Mrs. Hargrove's personal checking account. This is embezzlement, felony theft, criminal fraud. Constance stood abruptly, chair scraping backward. Ashford grabbed her arm, but she shook him off. "I was protecting property values, keeping this community safe. Everything I did was for the good of Riverside Meadows." Her voice pitched higher with each sentence, desperation bleeding through carefully maintained composure. Elijah's response came quiet, deadly. "Safe for whom, Mrs. Hargrove? Because it wasn't safe for Terrence, wasn't safe for Simone, wasn't safe for my 8-year-old daughter who watched you call police on her father. I never meant it wasn't about race. Then what was it about?" He let the question hang. "Explain to these people why 52 complaints came from minority families. Explain why you called 911 when you saw a black man in an expensive car. Explain the note you wrote saying, 'These people need to understand standards.'" Constance's mouth opened, closed. No explanation existed that wouldn't condemn her further. Victoria advanced the slides again. Email correspondence recovered from backups Constance thought she'd deleted. Timestamps showing messages sent from her account to Lillian's. March 2023. Lillian asked about reviewing the Caldwell noise complaints. Mrs. Hargrove's response: "People like this don't respect quiet hours. Dismiss it." Victoria's voice stayed professional, clinical. August 2023. Lillian questioned the Monroe citation. Mrs. Hargrove wrote, "These people lower our standards. If they can't maintain appropriate aesthetics, they should live elsewhere." The final email appeared on screen. Constance's words in black and white for everyone to read. Full context impossible to deny. December 2023. Lillian inquiring about payment to Emerald Property Services. Stop questioning every line item. Your job is administration, not investigation. Handle your responsibilities or find employment elsewhere. Threats against an employee who dared ask about embezzlement. The portrait completed itself. Not just a racist, not just a thief, someone who'd built a system designed to silence anyone who might expose her. Gary Henderson stood, board member who'd supported Constance for years. His face had gone red. "Mrs. Hargrove, I never approved these payments. You told the board landscaping costs were necessary to maintain property values. You said the previous company wasn't adequate. I trusted you. His hands shook. Did you ever intend to use that money for actual landscaping? Constance looked at him, at the crowd, at 19 families she'd persecuted, at Lillian, who'd finally found courage to speak, at Elijah, who'd refused to accept her version of reality. I needed the money. Barely a whisper. Gerald left. The mortgage was too high. The kids needed help with college. I just needed it was supposed to be temporary. The admission landed like a bomb. Even Ashford looked shocked. Whatever defense he'd planned evaporated with those words. Victoria didn't miss the opening. So you stole from your neighbors, from families who trusted you to manage their community honestly. And when your theft threatened to surface, you retaliated against the employee who might expose you. Elijah picked up where Victoria left off. And when those same neighbors complained about your discrimination, you buried their concerns, made them feel like problems instead of people, weaponized your position to punish anyone who didn't fit your vision of what Riverside Meadows should be. I'm sorry. Constance's voice broke. I never meant for any of this. I was trying to help, trying to keep standards high, trying to keep black families out. Terrence's voice cut across hers. He shifted Jaden to his other shoulder. That's what you were trying to do. And when we moved in anyway, you made our lives hell. Simone stood. You threatened to take my home over a trash can. My children watched me cry because I thought we'd lose everything we'd worked for. Isaiah's hand found Naomi's. Our daughter asked if we were allowed to be black here. She's 9 years old and you made her question whether she belonged. One by one, the 19 families stood. Silent testimony more powerful than words. Constance looked at them and finally seemed to understand the destruction she'd caused. Elijah pulled out the proposal he'd drafted with Victoria. Printed copies for everyone. I'm calling for immediate reforms. Independent financial audit conducted by a firm with no prior relationship to the HOA. New governance committee elected by residents with term limits and accountability measures. Review of all enforcement procedures to ensure equal application. Anonymous complaint system with mandatory investigation protocols. Mandatory bias training for any elected HOA official. He distributed copies. Residents grabbed them, read quickly. Furthermore, I'm recommending criminal referral to the district attorney regarding embezzlement charges. Civil suit regarding wrongful termination of Lillian Reeves. And community vote on whether to accept these reforms or whether I should dissolve the HOA entirely as is my right as property owner. That last part made the crowd murmur. Elijah had legal authority to disband the HOA, start fresh. Constance had given him every justification. But I'd rather fix what's broken than destroy and rebuild, so I'm asking you to vote. All residents in favor of implementing these reforms, raise your hands. Arms shot up. Elijah counted quickly, lost track around 100. Victoria had brought a second person specifically to do official count. The woman scribbled numbers on a notepad. All opposed. 14 hands. 15. 16. Constance's supporters dwindling by the second as they realized defending her meant defending theft and discrimination. 6 abstentions. Victoria announced the final count. 141 in favor, 16 opposed. Motion passes by substantial majority. The room exploded in applause. Cameras flashed. Reporters who'd been waiting outside pushed into the doorway. Elijah felt the weight of 6 years lifting off shoulders that had carried it for 3 days. Constance remained standing. Ashford pulled at her sleeve. She ignored him. I gave 6 years to this community. Her voice barely audible over the noise. I thought I was protecting something valuable, something worth preserving. She looked at Elijah. I was wrong. About everything. About you. about what makes a community valuable. Ashford's face said, "Stop talking. Every word is evidence." Constance kept going anyway. "I don't expect forgiveness. Don't deserve it. I just want you all to know that I see it now. What I did. What I became." Her gaze found the 19 families. "I'm sorry doesn't fix anything, but I'm sorry anyway." She walked toward the exit. Ashford scrambled to follow. Residents parted, let her pass. No one spoke until the door closed behind her. Zara's small hand found Elijah's. He looked down at his daughter. She'd stayed silent through the entire confrontation, watched adults present evidence of cruelty she was only beginning to understand. "Daddy, did we win?" The question was too simple and too complicated. They'd won the vote, won the reforms, exposed Constance's crimes. But winning felt hollow when measured against years of suffering that couldn't be undone. "We won the chance to build something better, Princess. That's the only kind of winning that matters." Zara smiled, gap-toothed and radiant. Then she climbed onto her chair, stood on the seat so everyone could see her. Elijah started to lift her down, but Victoria's hand on his arm stopped him. "My daddy says we build bridges, not walls." Zara's voice carried across the suddenly silent room. "Bridges bigger than the sky." The applause started with Wendell, spread to Terrence, Simone, Isaiah, and Naomi. Within seconds, the entire room was clapping. For Zara's innocence, for Elijah's courage, for the possibility that maybe finally things could actually change. 2 days later, the criminal charges came through. Fulton County District Attorney's Office announced investigation into embezzlement and fraud. Press conference with DA flanked by law enforcement. Constance Hargrove's photo on every news screen in Atlanta. Richard Ashford negotiated a plea agreement. 1 count of felony embezzlement. Full restitution. $334,800 paid over 5 years. 18 months probation. 250 hours community service. Permanent resignation from HOA with no future involvement. No jail time but criminal record that would follow her forever. Lillian's wrongful termination suit settled within a week. Reinstatement with back pay, $50,000 settlement. Public apology from the HOA board. She chose not to return to her position. Took a job with Thornton Capital instead at twice her previous salary. 3 weeks after the community meeting, Riverside Meadows held its first Democratic election. 7 committee seats, 61 candidates. Voter turnout hit 91%. The count took 4 hours. Volunteers from the county clerk's office supervised. Everything transparent, everything documented. Simone Harper won the most votes. 152 residents choosing the single mother Constance had threatened over a trash can violation. Isaiah Monroe, Wendell Grayson, Terrence Caldwell, Lillian Reeves as write-in candidate despite not officially running. Candace Miller, a black teacher who'd lived in Riverside Meadows for 8 years. Shanice Davis, a social worker in her 30s. Every single reform candidate won. 0 holdouts from Constance's era. Simone's acceptance speech was brief. 3 weeks ago, I thought about selling my house rather than fight. Today, you elected me to lead this community. I promise to serve everyone equally, to enforce rules fairly, to make sure every family knows they belong here. Policy changes followed quickly. All financial records posted online monthly. Town halls every 60 days. Anonymous complaint system with mandatory investigation within 7 days. Diversity and Inclusion Committee with rotating membership. Citation Review Board where residents could appeal enforcement decisions. The reserve fund rebuilding took longer. $334,800 represented years of deferred maintenance. But Constance's restitution payments started arriving. Monthly installments that slowly replenished what she'd stolen. 6 months passed, the kind of healing that happens in increments so small you only notice when you look back and realize how far you've traveled. Zara started sleeping through the night again. Stopped asking if they'd see the mean lady. Made new friends who didn't judge her father by a parking lot confrontation. The nightmares faded, not gone, but manageable. Riverside Meadows transformed brick by brick. The Monroe family put up Kwanzaa decorations in December. Nobody cited them. Other families joined in. Celebration of heritage instead of enforcement of homogeneity. Terrence hosted weekly barbecues, his porch filled with friends and music and laughter. Some neighbors complained about noise. The new HOA board investigated and found levels well within acceptable limits. Complaints dismissed. New families moved in. 2 black couples. 1 white family with adopted children of multiple races. The demographics shifted steadily towards something that actually reflected Atlanta instead of a carefully preserved enclave. Elijah established the Sullivan Community Fund. $2.5 million seeded from Thornton Capital profits. Scholarship program for children of single parents. 35 recipients annually. Priority given to students from communities that had faced discrimination. The board voted unanimously to name the new playground after Diana. Dedication ceremony scheduled for what would have been her 40th birthday. Ribbon cutting attended by 180 residents. Bronze plaque reading Diana Sullivan Thornton Memorial Playground. She believed everyone belongs. Zara helped plant the dogwood tree beside the swing set. Pink blooms every spring. Diana's favorite. The morning after the dedication, Elijah found Constance standing in his driveway. 7 a.m. on a Saturday. Her car idling at the curb. She looked thinner, older. Hair gray at the roots like she'd stopped bothering with dye. He could have called police. Had every right to after she'd done the same to him. Instead, he walked down the driveway in bare feet and t-shirt. "Mr. Thornton, I know I have no right to be here." "You don't." "I'm moving today, Florida. My sister has a place." Constance's hands twisted together. "I wanted to say something before I left. Not an apology. I know that's worthless. Just acknowledgement." Elijah waited. Let her struggle for words the way she'd made 52 families struggle for basic dignity. "My granddaughter is 7. Jessica brought her by last week. First time I'd seen her in 2 years. Aiden asked if I was the mean lady from the video." Constance's voice cracked. "My grandson thinks his grandmother is a villain. You were a villain to 19 families, to my daughter, to everyone who didn't fit your vision of what Riverside Meadows should be." "I know." Tears tracked down her face. "I know what I am, what I did. I just needed you to know that I see it now. The harm, the hatred." Everything I told myself was protecting the community was really protecting myself. My power, my comfort, my fear of change. Elijah studied her, saw genuine remorse. Also saw someone who'd been caught rather than someone who'd had a true awakening. Hard to tell where one ended and the other began. "What do you want from me, Mrs. Hargrove?" "Forgiveness, permission to feel better about yourself." "Nothing. I don't want anything." She wiped at her face. "I just thought you should know that Aiden's question made me understand. Made me realize that my legacy is shame. That my grandchildren will grow up knowing what their grandmother did. That's my punishment. Not probation or restitution. Knowing that everyone who matters sees who I really am." The front door opened. Zara appeared in pajamas. Elijah waved her back inside, but she'd already seen Constance, recognized the mean lady. Constance looked at Zara. At the 8-year-old she'd traumatized with a phone call. "I'm sorry." The words aimed at Zara. "I'm sorry for what I did to your father. For what I made you see. You deserved better." Zara's response was pure Diana, direct and unflinching. "My daddy says sorry doesn't fix what's broken. You have to build something new." Constance nodded, turned back to her car. Elijah let her go 3 steps before speaking. "Mrs. Hargrove." She stopped. "If you really want to build something new, Stop being who you were. Every time you see someone who doesn't look like you, challenge the first thought that comes. Every time you hear racist rhetoric, speak up. Every time you have choice between comfort and courage, choose courage. That's how you honor what you destroyed. Constance's shoulders shook. Crying or nodding, impossible to tell. She got in her car and drove away. Elijah never saw her again. Fall arrived with cooler temperatures and shorter days. Zara's 9th birthday fell on a Saturday in October. Elijah rented the Diana Thornton Memorial Playground for the afternoon. Invited everyone from school and the neighborhood. 35 kids showed up. Every race, every background, running and screaming and eating cake like children should. Simone brought her daughters. The Monroes came with their 3 children. Wendell arrived with his granddaughter. Terrence's son Jaden played on the swing set with kids who looked nothing like him and everything like the future. Elijah stood near the tree Diana had inspired. Watched Zara orchestrate some elaborate game involving tag and hide-and-seek and rules that changed every 30 seconds. She was happy. Genuinely. Completely. The way 9-year-olds should be. She looks like her mother. Simone appeared beside him, holding a paper plate with cake. The joy. That's pure Diana. Diana would have loved this. The playground. The diversity, the whole chaotic, beautiful mess of it. She'd be proud of you too, what you did for all of us. Simone's voice dropped. Terrence and I were talking about selling. Before you came, we'd already contacted a realtor. Couldn't take another year of Constance making us feel unwelcome. Elijah hadn't known that, hadn't realized how close the community had been to losing the very families that made it worth saving. I'm glad you stayed. We're glad you fought. Simone squeezed his arm, went to collect her daughters who'd climbed too high on the jungle gym. The sun started dropping toward the horizon. Parents began gathering children, promises of next time and see you at school and happy birthday, Zara. The playground emptied gradually until only Elijah and his daughter remained. They sat on the swings. Zara's feet barely touched the ground. Elijah pushed off and let momentum carry them, back and forth in synchronized rhythm. Daddy, Mrs. Simone said you're a hero. I'm not a hero, princess, just someone who refused to accept wrong as normal. Isn't that what heroes do? The question was too complicated for 9 years old, too simple for 38. Heroes were supposed to save people, fix things, make the world better through dramatic action. Elijah had just stood up when it would have been easier to stay silent, documented when others ignored, spoke when silence would have been safer. Maybe that was heroic, or maybe it was just being human in a world that made basic humanity seem exceptional. What do you think we built here, Zara? Is it bigger than the sky? She considered this with the seriousness she brought to science fair projects and complex math problems. I think we built a place where my friends don't have to be scared, where Jaden's daddy doesn't get the police called on him, where the Monroe kids can celebrate their culture. Pause. That's bigger than lots of skies. Elijah's throat tightened. 9 years old and already understanding what mattered. Already seeing past surface to substance. Diana's daughter, through and through. The sunset painted everything gold and orange and purple. Diana's favorite time of day. She used to say endings could be beautiful if you paid attention. Elijah had spent 3 years seeing only the endings, loss and grief and emptiness. But Zara was right. They'd built something, not perfect, not complete, but real. A community where 19 families no longer felt hunted, where children played together without seeing the boundaries adults tried to draw, where someone like Constance couldn't weaponize fear anymore because too many people had learned to speak up. You know what Mommy would say about all this? Elijah's voice came out rough. That we built bridges, not walls. That's right, and those bridges connected people who needed each other, made them stronger together than they could ever be apart. Zara jumped off the swing mid-motion, landed in grass and did a somersault. came up laughing with leaves in her hair. Pure joy, untouched by memory of parking lots and police calls and mean ladies who saw threats instead of people. "Can we come back tomorrow? I want to practice on the monkey bars." "We can come back whenever you want. This playground has your mommy's name on it. That means it's yours too." They walked to the phantom hand in hand, the car that had been evidence, proof of theft, justification for a 911 call that could have ended in tragedy. Now it was just transportation, metal and leather and engineering excellence that happened to be white. The drive home took 12 minutes. Elijah spent them thinking about everything that had happened since that Thursday afternoon when Constance's prejudice collided with his documentation. 52 families vindicated, $334,800 being repaid, reforms that would outlast any single president, a community learning that belonging wasn't conditional on conformity, and Zara, safe, healing, building friendships with kids whose parents had watched her father prove his humanity to police and decided he deserved better. That was the real victory. Not Constance's plea deal or resignation, not the headlines or press conferences or viral videos. The victory was Zara sleeping peacefully, Terrence hosting barbecues without fear, the Monroes celebrating Kwanzaa openly, Simone leading instead of fleeing. Justice hadn't arrived perfect, hadn't fixed everything broken. Constance would serve probation while Zara would spend years processing trauma. The HOA had new leadership, but racism didn't evaporate because rules changed. Progress was messy and incomplete and required constant vigilance. But progress was possible. That was what the last 6 months had proven. Possible when people stood up. Possible when victims became witnesses. Possible when someone with resources used them for more than profit. Elijah pulled into his driveway. 5,000 square feet Diana had filled with love. 3 years of absence that would never fully heal. But also 9 years of Zara who carried her mother's best qualities forward. "Daddy, I have homework." Zara unbuckled herself. "But can we build something first? Like with the Lego building. Always building. Bridges and playgrounds and communities and futures." Diana had taught them both that destruction was easy. Creation required courage. What do you want to build? A city, where everyone has a house and nobody's mean and everyone gets ice cream whenever they want. Utopian fantasy. Impossible dream. The kind of vision 9-year-olds specialized in. Also the kind of vision that changed the world when enough people refused to accept that impossible meant unachievable. "Then let's build it. Biggest city we've ever made." They spent the evening constructing elaborate Lego structures. Zara narrated the whole thing. "This building is where people learn to be kind. This park is where kids play together. This store gives food to anyone who's hungry." Creating the world as it should be because she hadn't learned yet that should and was rarely aligned. Elijah hoped she never fully learned that lesson. Hoped she'd keep building impossible cities and demanding better and refusing to accept wrong as inevitable. The world needed people who believed change was possible, even when evidence suggested otherwise. By bedtime, Zara had crashed hard. Sugar and excitement and the physical exhaustion of childhood joy. Elijah carried her upstairs, tucked her under covers, kissed her forehead. "Love you, princess. Love you bigger than the sky, Daddy." He stood in her doorway until sleep took her completely, then went downstairs to his office, opened his laptop, pulled up the latest report from the Sullivan Community Fund. 35 scholarships awarded. Students from single-parent households across Atlanta. Priority given to communities that had faced discrimination. First recipients would graduate high school in 3 years. Some would go to college, others to trade schools. All of them would carry forward the knowledge that someone had invested in their potential. Diana's legacy lived in that fund, in the playground bearing her name, in Zara's smile and fierce sense of justice, in every family at Riverside Meadows who no longer had to choose between belonging and being themselves. Elijah closed the laptop, walked to the window overlooking the backyard. The koi pond Diana had designed reflected moonlight, Ruth Bader and Thurgood and Sonia swimming their endless circles. Tomorrow he'd feed them, tell them about Zara's birthday and the playground and the city she wanted to build. Diana would have loved every second of today, would have cried watching children play on her memorial, would have stood beside him at the swings talking about belonging and bridges and the hard, beautiful work of creating communities that reflected humanity's best instead of worst. She wasn't here, would never be here again. But her belief in what was possible lived on. In Zara, in Elijah, in every person who chose courage over comfort. The fight wasn't finished, would never truly be finished. Racism didn't disappear because one HOA president resigned. Discrimination didn't evaporate because reforms passed. The work was generational, required constant vigilance, demanded people stand up again and again. But tonight, Riverside Meadows was different than it had been 6 months ago. Better, more inclusive, closer to the place Diana had envisioned when she'd said, "Buy it, Eli. Make it a place where everyone truly belongs." They'd built that place, brick by brick, policy by policy, conversation by conversation, not perfect, not complete, but real and belonging. 35 children had played together today without seeing the divisions their parents carried. Zara had celebrated her birthday surrounded by friends who judged her by her character instead of her melanin. Families who'd been targeted could finally breathe. That was worth everything. The parking lot confrontation, the press conferences, the sleepless nights and trauma and fear. All of it worth one afternoon of children playing on a playground named for a woman who'd believed belonging wasn't conditional. Elijah's phone buzzed. Wendell Grayson. Wanted you to know the playground already has a waiting list for birthday parties. Diana would be proud. Yes, she would be. Of the playground, the reforms, the community finding its voice. But mostly she'd be proud of Zara, of the girl who stood on a chair and declared they built bridges bigger than the sky. Because in the end, that was the only thing that mattered. Not defeating villains or exposing corruption or winning votes. Building something that lasted. Creating spaces where the next generation didn't have to fight the same battles. Zara would face racism, would encounter people who saw her skin before her humanity, would have to prove herself twice as hard for half the recognition. The world hadn't changed enough to prevent that. But she'd also have Riverside Meadows. Have the memory of her father standing up. Have the example of 19 families who spoke truth. Have the knowledge that belonging was her birthright and nobody could take it away. That knowledge would carry her through every parking lot confrontation still to come. Through every mean lady who dialed 911 based on prejudice. Through every moment when the world tried to tell her she didn't fit. She'd remember, and she'd build bridges anyway, bigger than the sky.